You guys remember that film, The Blind Side, starring Sandra Bullock? We'll talk about A Blind Side. The football player from that story, Michael Oher, is alleging that the family that adopted him actually put him into a conservatorship and denied him film payments. We got to break this down, and we brought in Christopher Melcher to do so. Welcome to Popcorn Planet. I am Andy Signor, and this story was breaking yesterday. We've now gotten a response from the family, and now we have Christopher Melcher to break it all down. Welcome to the show, Chris. Good to have you. How you doing?
Well, it's great to be here. It's just, another conservatorship abuse story. It's, just absolutely heartbreaking and disgusting to read these allegations that we're going to be going through.
Yeah, so just a quick summary before we get to his insight here. If you missed it, this is the film The Blind Side way back, which Sandra Bullock got an Academy Award for. A film that a lot of people liked. Some people always thought there was something weird to the film, the white saviorness of the film, what have you. But Michael Oher has always said, since the film's release, that it wasn't really that accurate of a story. And he was always frustrated that the family took all the credit and that he didn't get any credit for some of the things that he pulled himself out of. While he was grateful for the film's experience and the family, he always felt like he was actually looked at in different ways. In fact, he says his NFL career was also hurt by the film because the film portrayed him as this sort of slower individual, which he wasn't. He has been a critic of this film, but this is the first time now we're hearing that he's alleged not only did they deny him profits from the film and that the family and the other children of his family did reap the profits, but they actually put him into a conservatorship, which locked him out of a lot of certain rights. Now, we also have the family's response, which we'll get to in a second. They are saying that Michael's allegations are insulting. But before we get to their response, Christopher, I know you've seen and read this full statement that's now out there around. Can you sort of break down the things that you're seeing here and why this is cause for concern?
Sure. So yesterday, August 14th, Michael Oher filed in Tennessee court a petition regarding this conservatorship. And what he's alleging in here is that when he turned 18 in 2004, he had already been taken in to the Oher's household, but now he's an adult. And they're told him, according to Michael Oher's allegations, that they wanted to adopt him and make them part of the family. And so they had this attorney that they was treated as part of the family. They called her Aunt Debbie, come in and give papers to Michael Oher, again, as an 18-year-old, to saying, hey, we're going to adopt you, and presented the papers as such. And he signed them. Well, now, later on, realized that they were not adoption papers. They were conservatorship papers. And those papers were agreeing by Michael Oher as an 18-year-old adult to place himself under a conservatorship, making the Ohers the conservators, meaning these people who would now hold all of this power over his life, and Aunt Debbie being the attorney for Michael, for the Ohers, and for Michael's mother, representing all four, which is an obvious conflict of interest. In the petition for conservatorship that they had him sign, the Ohers said that Michael should be precluded, meaning prohibited, from having the capacity to enter into any contracts or making any medical decisions, and all those powers to contract or make medical decisions would then be held by the Ohers. There's no reason for such a contract such a conservatorship to exist over him. Michael Oher has said that he's never been diagnosed with any physical or psychological disability. And for a conservatorship to exist over an adult, you're taking away civil rights of one person and putting it into the hands of another adult. There has to be a showing that this person lacks the ability to care for themselves or to resist fraud or undue influence. And so certainly there are some people who have that level of problem in their life, and they need another adult to come in there and protect them. This was absolutely not indicated at all. The Ohers, in their response, admit that there was no medical need for this conservatorship. They have this other excuse that we'll get into, but this was highly abusive, tricked this guy into doing it, and then going and entering into contracts in his name with Aunt Debbie being the lawyer for that film contract. And now Michael Oher is saying, what happened to my money?
Well, it's interesting because as I was perusing and looking at the arguments from both sides, it seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, there's this nefarious intent that it seems Michael Oher is potentially putting out there, that they knew his football ability, his size, his speed. It was almost like they were looking for people that they could potentially help and then bet on to see if they would get on this path. Did you get that vibe as well from this? There's this implication that the Ohers are really doing this to make their own story, to help their own brand and potentially profit in the success if they could actually get this kid to get to the pros.
Well, that all is going to come out. And once there's, what we call discovery, and Debbie's going to have to, stand to answer questions. And certainly the parents are also. I'm sorry, not the parents. They didn't adopt. And so all that's going to kind of come out. How it evolved, I have no clue. But all I know is there was no reason for a conservatorship. And now we're seeing here the supposed adopted father coming in there and saying, well, hey, he denies all that, and that's fine. These are just allegations, and he has a right to deny them, and a court will decide them. But what he's saying, the father, Mr. Tuohy, is saying, hey, if Michael doesn't like this conservatorship, I'm happy to end it. Well, obviously Michael doesn't like it. He's suing him to end it.
Yeah.
So why doesn't he just resign? And secondly, Tuohy's saying, the supposed father is saying, well, 2004, when Michael became an adult, we wanted to get him into the school, Ole Miss, to play football. Tuohy was, a big booster there and had influence there, but it could only get him in as a player or a student if he was a family member, and that's why they wanted to adopt him, but they couldn't adopt him because he was an adult, and they came up with this scheme to put him under conservatorship. Well, a couple problems with that. Number one is that whether it was in Tennessee or Alabama, not totally clear where they were living in 2004, but in either state, they allow for adult adoption. So that premise is false that he's stating. Secondly, if the whole idea and the sole idea for having a conservatorship placed under him was to allow him to enter the school as an 18-year-old, why, 19 years later, does a conservatorship still exist? And so Mr. Tuohy is acknowledging that conservatorship still exists, that he is the conservatorship, and that if, as if there were any doubt about it, that Michael wanted out of it, that he's happy to agree to it. Well, again, why is it existing so long? That makes absolutely no sense. The other thing is that Tuohy's saying, for really sympathy reasons, oh, well, Michael's departed from the family, it's very upsetting, last 6 months, not a whole lot of contact. Well, why are you a conservatorship over him? Why do you have control over his medical decisions and right to contract if he doesn't even want anything to do with you, Mr. Tuohy? So there's a lot of problems there with this story. Obviously, it's developing, but it looks really, really ugly so far.
Well, and the film made a ton of money. It painted the Tuohys. It painted specifically the mom, which Sandra Bullock played, in a very, important, crucial, almost like did it all for him and create this family. She's gone on to become an author, motivational speaker. This is not a good look for their brand at the end of the day. People are also really mad. They're trying to take it on Sandra Bullock, which, guys, Sandra Bullock had nothing to do with this. She played a role. I think she played the role really well. She has nothing to do with this controversy except that she portrayed this character that, honestly, the source material maybe wasn't as accurate as it should be, which is a shame because as a story, it's a nice enough story. But you go back and you just see how involved in the early days they tried to paint themselves as sort of the one who did all this and, pioneering his football career, putting him out there, to know that then there's apparently, which if the Tuohys are telling the truth, then there should be clear paperwork, right? And proof here, Christopher, that will nip all this in the bud and clear it up for everybody. It doesn't seem like that's what's going to happen here. It seems like Michael Oher is pretty confident with lawsuit intended that there is evidence that not only the Tuohys make money, the kids each made payments, and he's seen zero of it. In fact, ESPN was reporting in the report that, not only was Uncle, but the deal that was made was also brokered by that aunt, I believe, as well. There's a lot of conflicts of interest in here that I think really, really put a spotlight on. And as Sean, the father, has now said, he's saying this is untrue, it's ignorant, this is insulting, he's not want to be a part of the family, we did this because of that. But as you said, Christopher, they didn't even need to do that. So he's sort of even caught in his own response. So how do you see this all netting out? And do you think, what's the next phase that we should be paying attention to ensure that Michael does get this, his rights if they were taken?
There's lessons here that you and I are always looking at and covering, kind of breaking news, because when these stories come out, they're news to us. So yesterday was the first time that we knew any of this was going on, but it wasn't news to the Tuohys. So they would have known, I would have thought, sometime before yesterday, based on their own statement that Michael was, not happy with the family and all this kind of stuff. I got to imagine there was some notice given to them before Monday. And why come out with such a weak and inconsistent response? And so again, kind of a PR crisis management thing fail on their point. Now, in the complaint or petition, there's an insinuation that they were hiding the existence of the conservatorship from 20th Century Fox when they made the film deal. And so there's an allegation in there that when they made the film deal, and you can keep kind of scrolling down, we can see it, that when they entered into that deal, basically what happened is that
Sorry, I'm
Aunt
looking
Debbie
for it for you. That moment
so Aunt Debbie was assigned to get all notices and contractual payments under the contract from 20th Century Fox as the attorney for Michael. And so it appears that they didn't disclose to 20th Century Fox that he was under a conservatorship, because that might have raised some questions like, well, why does that make any sense? And maybe counsel for the studio getting involved. So again, I don't have all the details because that's a private contract. And but that does sound very, very odd to me. And, again, this is one of the things that's going to come out. And what they really should have had ready to go is saying, like, look, we didn't make a dime off of this guy. And which Mr. Tuohy says. But then when he was questioned about it, he acknowledges, yeah, well, there was some money we got from the writer. It was like $14,000 each. So when I say no money, I didn't really mean, literally zero. It was like $14,000. So, already the story's not holding up. But again, like with others that they're contracting with, normally you would sign the contract as the conservator in the name of the conservator on behalf of the conservatee. We saw that in Brittany's case. And then people are aware, like, okay, this person is under a conservatorship. If they're doing it here in a way that's not acknowledging that, then that would make it look like they were trying to hide something. And why would they try and hide something if they thought it was perfectly legal? I think it was maybe a little bit above that. Or one about.
Well,
the
this part is interesting too, because again, he had to sign his whole life away, his rights away, everything without any payment, and he is alleging he didn't sign that, and if he did, it was through this, I guess, conflict of interest lawyer that was doing it for him, this Aunt Debbie, which is questionable. If this proves to be the case, I guess this is where you were talking about, but if that proves to be the case and he was treated wrongly and the lawyer was clearly had a conflict of interest, can that negate this file?
Well, so if like we saw in Brittany's case, and we've yet to see her take this legal action, but there is a right by the conservatee, once the conservatorship is terminated, to sue for all this relief, because right now his right to sue is in the hands of the Tuohys, because all those rights were given to them by the court. And so he's got to restore his rights. He's making a claim. He wants an injunction, which is a legal order blocking them from moving any of the money. So he wants all of his money parked and not moved. And then he can start making claims. Now, if anything was done fraudulently or breach of fiduciary duty, he can kind of undo maybe some of the contracts and recover some money. It's just going to, again, depend on how much of this was disclosed. Michael says that he didn't really become aware of this situation until February of 2023. So, how did it go on for so long? And, my kind of feeling on that is, these things are they're in a position of trust when you agree to sign some paperwork that you think is an adoption by people who are taking you into their household. And so obviously he trusted them enough to sign that without having independent counsel or reading it himself probably. And so it's maybe not a surprise that a lot of time would go by under this arrangement where he didn't question it because he trusted them. He thought that they were looking out for him.
Right.
And at some point he kind of realized that that was not true. So this is going to, kind of go on, obviously, but my accountability that I would like to see happen is on the court system, because they are the judges are the ones that are supposed to protect people. because of course you're going to have conservatorship applications that are completely necessary, and then you're going to have some that are abusive. And so the process is you really bring the person into the court, the judge makes eye contact and talks with this person to understand, like, why do you need a conservator? And you start asking questions like, how old are you and where are you today? Why are you here today? Who are these people with you? You know, you start asking questions, and within a couple minutes you can kind of realize, like, you know, whether somebody's tracking with you. And Michael would have completely tracked, and they would realize immediately, like, this person doesn't need a conservatorship. And so that was the first line of defense that obviously failed. The judge, the judicial system failed this guy. And then there should be oversight. Every year there should be oversight, and a social worker going out and investigating and reporting back to the court, and judge asking critical questions like, okay, if it was needed last year, why is it needed this year? Why is he able to work but still need another adult to control his finances and especially medical decisions? Those critical questions weren't asked, so I blame the court. People can't take advantage as conservators unless courts let them do it. And that's what we saw with Brittany. LA Superior Court completely failed her over and over again. It expressly violated her rights without notice, without having independent counsel. This gentleman, same thing. He didn't have independent counsel. Aunt Debbie, representing the supposed parents who were putting him under the conservatorship, obviously have a conflict of interest with Michael. And how could she possibly represent all of them? She can't.
And then allowing 20th Century Fox here to have those personal rights. But that's where I can, if that conflict of interest is proven, can that negate any of these contracts once he gets his control back?
So it depends on what 20th Century Fox knew. And so my presumption is they didn't know about any of this stuff. And so they are, you know, not responsible for undoing the contract. But if they knew that something was going on like this,
know that there was a problem. It's on Michael, sadly, then, I guess, and given he was an adult. So hopefully he gets to control this, and there is next steps. So there you go. We'll keep you guys posted on this blindside bombshell story, because it is shocking, and I'm not buying these. This was not a good response, as Christopher said. It's true. It's so weird how they have time to present and then they don't really give a proper response. Because if it's untrue, then just say we saw barely any money. We will happily do an audit to show to Michael. We paid Michael, and there's an easy way. I don't know where this is coming from, but we are more than open to speaking to his attorneys. Like there's an easy way to respond to make this go away. And instead he's defensive and fighting back. So to me, it seems like something is fishy. Christopher, really well done. Thank you as always. Make sure you guys, if you want more updates on stories like this as they break, follow cia_divorce. He always sometimes gets into some threads and stuff that you'll want to see there. So give him a follow over there if you can. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button here. Hit the bell for all alerts as well right there. And smash that thumbs up and leave a comment down below. And join us. We'll be live for my birthday today. It's my birthday at 3 p.m. Come hang out with us. We're going to have some fun. Thank you guys so much for watching. Stay tuned for more here on Popcorn Planet.